Hello. I want to talk about creationism. Creationism. It brings both a sense of certainty and a happy chuckle to many different sorts of people. There is a very wide variety of ideas about creationism and evolution, respectively. Usually, strong opinions go along with both at the same time. But what are each of these really? I want to discuss creationism, how it is perceived by its believers. Then I want to tackle evolution, what it really is, and how creationists twist it that it may support their beliefs, even though it is literally the biggest stake in the heart of literalist thinking. First of all, what is creationism? Well, quite simply, creationism is the flat earth conspiracy. Of course, this is not exactly correct, but it is the same kind of thing. When you go outside and look around, does the earth look spherical to you? It looks flat to me. I mean, there really isn't a good reason to think otherwise. And this was the common assumption for most of the BC years. But then in 240 BC, a well-known experiment occurred. Eratosthenes made a remarkable, indeed a revolutionary observation. He noted that shadows, which he observed in wells, changed depending on where he was on Earth. He was able to triangulate the relative position of the sun to the ground, and by calculating the distance between his points of observation, he was able to calculate the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy. And then Christopher Columbus tackled him, grabbed the awesome scientist trophy, and escaped to the West Indies. Well, that would have been a lot more exciting to watch. Unlike many people think, Columbus did not discover that the Earth was round. The point here is that everyone knew the Earth was flat by looking at it for thousands of years. By making simple observations and following those observations to their logical conclusion, this man, Eratosthenes, was able to shed some light on the nature of reality. We should be rejoicing as a global population that we no longer live under a shadow of misconception. But there is a group of people, despite massive amounts of evidence to this day, who outright refuse to accept the obvious. The Flat Earth Society is the secular counterpart to creationists. To sum up, in the same way the Flat Earth assumption was shown to be false by observation, special creation was shown to be false by evolution. The next video will discuss why evolution is a fact and a theory, but for now, I want to delve into the mindset of the creationists and why they fight so hard against modern biology. Creationism is the result of an assumption, that is, the inerrancy doctrine. This idea is vital to the salvation of those who adhere to this idea. Inerrancy demands the believer to accept the Christian scriptures, whole cloth, as divinely inspired and without error. As such, since the creation story is divinely inspired, believers must accept the story regardless of what evidence suggests otherwise. They are also known as literalists. That is, they accept the Bible wholly and literally. Balaam really did hear his donkey talk as described in Numbers 22. Elisha really did produce magical oil for the widow as described in 2 Kings 4. Joshua really did make the sun stand still, as described in Joshua 10. The Bible could have described the earth exploding and the sun floating off into the distance, and literalists would believe this, despite the fact that the sun can be seen today. How might they deal with this? Well, maybe that the sun was covered by God's secret cloud angel for as long as the Bible said the sun was absent. Maybe they could explain away an exploding earth by using comets falling, causing some of the earth to break off, float away, and become an asteroid. Literalists have a very vivid imagination. They use their imaginations to fill in the gaps when an apparent contradiction is observed. For example, the earth is described as flat. In Isaiah and Revelations, the four corners of the earth are described. In Jeremiah and Daniel, these prophets speak of the ends of the earth. In Psalms and Ecclesiastes, the earth is described as having foundations from which it can never be moved. Some literalists are flat earthers for exactly the same reason creationists deny evolution. They read the Bible, describing a flat earth, and therefore they believe it. No evidence allowed to the contrary. But most creationists are not willing to go that far, to deny reality to such a ridiculous level. The observability of a round earth makes such a claim laughable. However, a claim such as evolution is not so airtight, so they claim. Creationists are willing to deny the current understanding of biology. Thus, they hold fast to the idea that the earth was created in 6 days, and absolutely deny evidence to suggest a billions-year-old earth. The important thing to note here is that when someone claims to be an absolute literalist, they still cherry-pick just how literally they take the Bible. Kent Hoven and his counterpart without a felony record, Ken Ham, are two of the most vocal proponents of creationism. Kent had an extensive career of seminars and ran a small theme park in his backyard called Dino Adventureland, while Ken manages the Creation Museum in Ohio. Kent is well known for his run-in with the law. For one thing, he never filed income taxes, or, as he says, for the last 28 years. Secondly, he made frequent banking transactions, less than the reportable $10,000, and thus was convicted of something called structuring. 31 U.S. Code 5324 makes illegal the regular banking transactions below the reporting requirement of $10,000, and these transactions must be shown to be structured in order to hide them from reporting to the IRS. This is usually done to hide a drug business or whatever it may be. The point is that they don't want the IRS to know about their transactions. It is possible that Kent was trying to hide his business income. He has published income tax advice suggesting that if the IRS has no record of your income, they can't order you to pay taxes. Now, while I personally think he got a bum rap, many small business owners get caught up in this draconian legislation, actually intended to apply to drug dealers and organized crime. His refusal to pay his taxes, or even file, gives me no doubt he would have gone to jail regardless. I personally despise this law and wish they had simply gotten him on tax evasion, because I hate being on his side on anything. However, it is what it is. Yes, I publicly admit that I do not think that Kent Hoven should have been put in prison, because the government used the structuring law to convict him. As I said, I think he would have gone to prison for tax evasion, but in this case, they should have lost the case. And I publicly admit I don't think Kent Hoven should have gone to prison. Moving on. The point here is that Kent personally believed, based on his reading of the IRS code and other people's books, that he was free from paying taxes. As such, he didn't pay and went to prison as a result. Why is this important? His actions, based on faith, show he is very sincere about what he believes. While it is possible he is nothing but a huckster and saw dollar signs, I don't know. Believers tend to do wacky things out of conviction rather than pure deceit. He was blatantly in violation of U.S. federal law, but claimed his innocence all the way to a jail cell for 10 years. In the same way, he claims truth in the face of overwhelming evidence against him. You can see just how far he is willing to go to hold to his beliefs. Kent has, for many years, made outlandish claims about science. He frequently touts his postgraduate degree via correspondence from a known diploma mill to establish his credentials. I have read his so-called doctoral dissertation, and, well, let's just say it's not a dissertation, and it is certainly not scholarly. It is a collection of his personal views on how history conspired broadly to put evolution into the public sphere. On page 11 he writes, "I would like to trace the history of evolution beginning with the fall of Satan from heaven through the last 6,000 years to modern day evolution and explain what those teaching this doctrine have planned for the future." Bum bum bum. Satan is the mastermind behind this false doctrine, evolution. At the end of his text he writes, Moses would have been a liar if evolution were true. Jesus obviously taught in a young earth and an instantaneous creation. Jesus would have been a liar also if evolution were true. Bum bum bum. So we see here that Kent's very faith seems to depend on the current science of biology to be wrong. He is fundamentally biased. His very soul is at stake. As I described in my video, The Mind of the Believer, Kent has a whole world in his head which is more real than the real one, similar to a schizophrenic patient. He knows he is right, and thus, no evidence you provide him will ever support the claim that biological evolution through time is valid in any way. If you have never seen Kent's videos, I recommend that you do. It is a clear study in the ability for a believer to explain away anything which counters his beliefs. He has made incredible claims to explain where the water came from in the flood, where all the dinosaurs went, and offered dizzying ideas to explain why every method of investigation into the Earth's origins are invalid. Ironically, his excuse for his crusade is that he doesn't want his tax dollars to be used to teach the religion of evolution in public school. Well, considering he never paid taxes, I don't know what he is so upset about. And again, just because he is still making this fucking point, he doesn't pay taxes. He has no right to say a damn thing about what federal revenues are used for. Sure, maybe he paid local taxes for schools, which may be a valid point, but the only reason he gives for pushing the anti-evolution in schools pitch is the tax angle, and he is a convicted tax evader. Shame on him for such obfuscation. I'm sorry, but the irony there just really pisses me off. Anyway, rant over. Creationism is so blatantly false when stacked up to evolution. Creationists are having a hard time keeping up. Enter stage left, Ken Ham. He was made famous during a debate against Bill Nye the Science Guy. His Creation Museum is essentially an outreach center for indoctrination. Throughout the facility, scenes and pictures of his version of Earth's history is on full display, complete with raptors wearing saddles, a section to explain every one of humanity's ills known as the Fall, and an anti-evolution section called Natural Selection is Not Evolution, complete with aquarium. Along with Bible Adventureland, there are special anti-secular biology exhibits, such as the Lucy exhibit from a biblical standpoint, the homology room, with its own resident biologist to explain away any suggestion that his academic colleagues know anything about biology, and a starting points section where modern biology is juxtaposed unfavorably compared to the creationist narrative, demonstrate conclusively the theme of this monument to misinformation. Now, do we take these two men who have dedicated their lives to this kind of blatant misinformation as hucksters? Are these nothing but money-grubbing liars? Hell-bent, pardon the pun, hell-bent on turning back the clock on science? Or do we take them as dangerous ideologues, driven to manipulate society, perhaps leading to severe academic decline? I would say probably a little of both. On the one hand, no one who can operate in society without help can be so incredibly deluded and keep a straight face. Are they willingly ignorant, blocking out the facts to keep their faith alive? Probably to a point. Or do they see giving up and accepting biology as it is to be essentially the loss of a huge income stream? I'm certain that has something to do with it. In any case, regardless of the personal gain involved, I think creationism is still the outgrowth of extreme adherence to magical thinking. Most other religious adherents are far more selective in what they accept as God-given. Evolution has been accepted by the Catholic Church, many evangelicals, and most moderate sects of Christianity. One must wonder, though, that if they, the moderates, the so-called reasonable faiths, if they can allow for something like a virgin birth, a parting Red Sea, and water magically turned into alcohol, why wouldn't they also adhere to such extreme views, such as those of Kent and Ken? It seems strange that these moderates are willing to accept less of the Bible and more of reality. Miracles seem to be just as unlikely as something like a creation which flies in the face of scientific evidence. Why not hold to disproven ideas like a young earth creationist? Well, it seems to me that the more extreme one's position, the greater their faith. It's almost as if the religious person's faith can be weighed against reality, and the more they diverge, the greater the person's faith. As if to say, I look like I'm taking crazy pills. Something must be working. Praise Jesus! Thus we can conclude that the more reality one lets into the faith, the weaker one's faith becomes. Their Bible says in the last days will come laughers and scoffers. So when we laugh at their stupidity, they take it as a compliment that they have great faith. Yes, truly, they have a dizzying intellect. And they really are as retarded as they sound, as I described in the first video. They build themselves a house of lies in their minds. But just as in Plato's cave, where the shadows are the truth, the lies in their heads are also the truth. They would not ever consider leaving the cave, for that would mean, to them, certain eternal death. The stakes to allow the truth to be what it is makes leaving the cave just not an option for these people. The stakes are just too damn high. Again, pardon the pun. So, when you hear Kent spouting off about how a calcified fossil is too old to be carbon dated.
Hey, Hoven! We can't carbon date this! There's no carbon in it!
Or you hear Ken dragging out the old chestnut, historical science, realize they are lying, making up stuff, fraudulently, misrepresenting themselves, but not as you and I might. They are creating excuses and explanations which allow their puzzle to still fit together. To them, it doesn't matter if their explanations are true or not. What matters is that observable reality fits their preconceived ideas, their mental shadows. After all, to a true believer, the shadows are reality, and the world outside the cave are lies, which must, without exception, get explained away. The shadows must remain, regardless of the consequences, regardless of how retarded it makes these cave dwellers look. I hope this video gives someone listening a new way of looking at this phenomenon called young earth creationism. Thanks for listening.